declining EAV is going to affect tax rates and the potential effect of tax rates on the district's operating budget. To start with, I'm giving you a little bit of history here on Lake Bluff School District 65's 10-year tax rate history. The spike that you see from the $1.88 to the almost 2008 cents was the 2003. Sorry, Herb. I just got in trouble already. Was for the 2003 Education Fund Rate Referendum. So that was brought us up to 208. Since then, the board has been attempting to keep the rate pretty much the same. To do that, first of all, the board levies dollars, and they levy those dollars in December. And in December, we don't know what the equalized assessed valuation of the property is going to be. Typically, we get that around the end of March or first part of April. So we really are doing our best estimate based on trends, some things, information we get from the township supervisor. But their goal has been to levy the dollars that would maintain a rate. And overall, they've done a pretty good job. We were at 208 for the 2002 levy, which are taxes payable in 2003. And today, we're right at 208. And we've gone up and down a penny, 2 pennies here and there. After the building bond referendum, our rate actually fell a little bit. And that was, again, our effort was to maintain the rate. EAV went up a little more than we anticipated, so the rate actually came down. So the board's done a good job of trying to maintain the rate, but with declining EAV, that's going to change.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
We just got our first little regardment, and I called Shields Township to see what happened on average. They said on average across the system it dropped about 8.5%.
That's correct.
So doesn't that kind of tell you what the number's going to be? Is it going to be about 8.5%?
Kind of, but we don't. Nothing is final, and the state can apply their own multiplier and things like that, which they'll do in February.
So it's directional, but it's not exact.
It's not exact, but we can come close to what our estimate is, but we never really know what the EAV is. But we can come close, which is why we've been able to kind of maintain that rate over the years. We are estimating that it is going to be an 8% decline.
Because that's your forecast.
That's our forecast for this next year. And the gentleman just indicated that he got his blue slip showing the decline in EAV, which is about 8%. And so what I've talked to a few Lake Bluff residents, and everybody's kind of seeing that 8% right around their decline. And so that seems to be what we're seeing. So projected rates. And for this year, we are estimating an 8% decline in our total EAV. And our EAV is that property within the boundaries of the Lake Bluff School District. The following year, we're estimating a 10% decline. And that is based on information we've received from Township Assessor's Office. After that, I am using the assumption that we'll see finally maybe a little increase in property values, and I'm using 2% each year for 2 years in a row. That's a guess, but at some point in time we think that there's going to have to be some recovery here. If that doesn't play out, then certainly the tax rates won't increase as they would if it were to increase at 2%. But for now, those are the assumptions we're using to project out future tax rates. Now, there's 2 lines on this graph. Based on what the board decides to do with their levy for the next 5 years, they can again attempt to maintain the tax rate, which is kind of the red line that just kind of stays horizontal, kind of keep us as close as they can to that $2.08. Or they can levy accordingly and let the tax cap formula, the PTEL formula, calculate as it will in any other year. If we levy accordingly and let the PTEL formula calculate, that blue line is what's going to happen to the tax rates. That's a significant increase.
Trying to keep the dollars about the same, is that what that PTEL is doing?
It will raise the dollars. It will increase the dollars.
Total.
It'll increase dollars.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Beyond just maintenance. I got you.
Yes. It'll increase dollars as the tax cap does it. There is some limitation because the tax cap formula is supposed to allow us to limit the taxes up to 5% or the CPI, whichever is greater. But the rate will increase significantly. However, how does that translate and what does that mean to the school district? And then we'll talk about what that means to the taxpayer themselves. If we maintain the current tax rate, try to levy to maintain the rate, which was the red line that stays kind of horizontal right around the $2.08, then that's going to affect the dollars we bring in for our operating funds, which I'm looking at education fund, operation maintenance, and transportation. So these are our current fund balance there for 2010, and this is what, based on, again, my assumptions, projections for expense trends, and what those projected tax rates would bring into the district in revenue, this is what's going to happen to our fund balances, which means we're going to bring in less money than we spend and ultimately eat away at our fund balances. If we allow that tax rate to increase to the maximum that we showed on the bar graph, the blue line that really took the tax rate up high, then our fund balances are going to continue to grow a little bit every year, which means we'll spend our dollars and have surplus in each of the funds. Transportation, not so much, but that's part of that is also assumptions on what the state's doing with our funding as well, which in Lake Bluff School District, we are fortunate in these times to not be dependent upon the state of Illinois for the vast majority of funding for our educational fund. We're in a good position there where the vast majority of the state of Illinois, the other school districts in the state, dependent on the state for funding, are in quite dire straits right now. But we're not in that situation. Briefly, I want to talk about the taxpayers' effect, or the effect on taxpayers from the tax rates. Okay. I'm using, for an example, a home that's valued at $500,000. So if they see an 8% decline, and if we allow the tax rate to calculate as it will through the PTEL rate, which means the big increase in the tax rate would increase from 208 to 235. Their tax bill for just the Lake Bluff School District 65 portion would have been about $3,467 this past year. The next year, even with a almost 30-cent increase, their tax bill is only going to go up $137. The following year, if their home value declines by 10%, as we anticipate the total EAV is, the tax rate's going to jump up another 35 cents. That's a significant increase in the tax rate. But for that home, their value is also declining, so their change in tax bill is going to go up, but only $123. Those are based on the assumptions of total EAV declining at 8%, followed by 10%, and the same decline in this specific home's value. Now, if the district were to try to levy to maintain that tax bill of $3,467, that would translate into the two tax rates of $226 and $251. Basically, what the board is going to kind of educate themselves on, investigate, is over the next couple of years how they're going to levy. What's the ultimate goal going to be? Is it going to be allow the rates to increase to the maximum that they can, or is there going to be a happy medium versus maintaining the rate? You know, what's the effect on our operating budgets in the future and effect on the homeowner? That's it. Question?
Could I understand the rationale for why we keep the surpluses, which looked about $7 million in the out years? If presumably it's a rainy day fund and it's a rainy day, why don't you use the rainy day fund?
That's a question that I would like the board to answer, but I will tell you, having been in this business for 20-some years, rainy days will come. We're being proactive to avoid getting to the point where a lot of the school districts are in now, because they are dependent on state state budgets or state funding, all of a sudden, and it is sudden, wow, we don't have any money and we're laying off 100 teachers in the big districts. We don't want to get there. So we're building up the surplus to stave off till the point where we're starting to, and eventually it will happen, we will start spending more than we're bringing in. That's why you had a referendum in '03. It will happen eventually, but we can push that off and push that off and push that off as long as we can maintain some surplus. And things do happen. Unknowns happen as well. Special education costs can spike from one year to the next, drastically spike. Maybe one child or two children. Operation maintenance fund. Things can happen that can really spike an expenditure in 1 year versus another. If you've got a rainy day fund, that's what you need to do.
Well, not to jump in on your
No,
presentation
please.
too, but one other really important part of that rainy day fund is that even though right now we're getting 0.7%, I think, on our investment return, somewhere in there,
On a good day.
on a good day, that investment return does fund programs too. Okay, so we do count on interest income to fund regular programs. So that the healthier the fund balance is, within reason, obviously you don't take it up to 300%, but within reason, that fund balance that's above and beyond is drawing interest that we then can use to not have as high a tax rate in the future, because you can return more on that investment, especially as interest rates go back up. You should be able to predictably say we have X amount coming back in return each year, which is 2 teachers or whatever. So that is an important part of it too. And the state also recommends you have 25% fund reserve.
As a minimum.
Yeah, as a minimum. And that's a board goal as well, and a board policy that we try to maintain. And so what Jane here has shown is kind of the 2 extremes. And so if we tax all the way to the end and spend as we've been spending and everything like that, then that's what we believe our fund balance would be. And then also if we didn't, we held the tax rate constant and we kept spending the way we're spending, that showed that negative graph. So,
2014 or so?
yeah. So what we're probably going to be dealing with is some reality in the middle somewhere, but that's why we're having these meetings, to determine where that point is.
Is there any coordination between all the taxing bodies?
So the District 65 is X portion of the total assessment, but you've got District 115, you've got, the Park District. Every one of them are making, presumably separate decisions on what they'll do with their millage rate. Is there anybody thinking about how the pieces fit together? Because the individual homeowner could get hit by multiple.
We talk to each other. There has been no pact made to make sure one is up while another is down. But we do talk to each other to try to determine, okay, what is it you're doing now? What is it you're asking for? Because we do want to take that into account.
But each governing body has to take care of themselves and their budgets. And we're blessed in the state of Illinois to have, a plethora of governmental entities that many states don't have. But, we have a lot of different taxing bodies in the state of Illinois.
Jane, would you just repeat for us how much we're owed currently by the state for last school year and what we're anticipating for the coming? Thank you.
I don't know if I can remember the dollars. We're in hundreds of thousands. Basically, for the categoricals, we typically get 4 payments a year from the state. Last year, we got 2 of those 4. We anticipate maybe getting the other 2 by the end of December this year. That's the most recent information I got from the state board. For fiscal year 11, which we just started in July, we're being told we'll get 1 of the 4 payments this fiscal year. So it's right now the state has a shortfall of about $12 billion to pay the current year's appropriations.
13 million.
13.
That was the
This year's
number.
appropriations, the pension payment, they don't have enough. And so out of the general fund, 37% of the general fund goes to education. So any additional cuts that have to be made, and the governor currently has $900 million that he can still cut from this year's budget, most likely will come from education. So right now they're saying we'll get that 25% of categoricals. That doesn't mean we will. And general state aid, which we don't get a lot of, but it's almost $250,000, they could very well prorate that or since we are a flat grant district, they may say, you know what, you got high property values, we're taking it away. The state can do that anytime. It doesn't matter what the laws say, they can do that anytime, and they've done it in the past.
Well, and another question somebody asked me a couple days ago, the federal government's come out with this Save Our Teachers federal aid program. We get none of that money, okay? Because in Illinois there are 3 levels of general state aid. There's I guess 65 to 70% of the districts are under the foundation level. And then there's the alternate formula districts, and then there's the flat grant districts. And that's based on a property tax value per student, okay? So it's EAV per pupil number. We are considered a wealthy school district and a flat grant district, so we are not eligible for any of those dollars. And so when you hear other districts getting millions and millions and millions and millions or hundreds of thousands, depending on the size, we've already seen the numbers. We get nothing. So in case anybody's wondering about that, I hope those districts get it. That would be wonderful for them, but we won't get any of that.
No more?
All right. That concludes the meeting, right?
Thank you for coming.
Is this repeated 4 times, or are the different?
It's going to be pretty much the same thing. Yeah, unless some questions bring something else that, you know, we need to add that to the next meeting, we'll do that. But pretty much it's going to be the same information. It's all gearing up towards the next levy.